Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves podcast, powered by the Geelong Region Soccer Show. And it is an absolute pleasure now to welcome back to the show someone who has been on the show on several occasions, and he's always a welcome guest on the Game of Two Halves podcast. It's Councillor EDDY KONTELJ. EDDY, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Tonchi. Thanks for having me.
Mate, a huge week of football. And let's talk about the Matildas, because that seems to have got everyone on a very positive kind of a mood this week. Did you watch the game last night? You're a very busy man, but did you manage to get a little bit of time to watch the Matildas?
I was listening to it live stream because I had some work functions on last night. So unfortunately, couldn't get to see it, but certainly was listening to it and following it on social media. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. Now it must. You've had daughters who have played the sport. You've been heavily involved as a football enthusiast, a supporter, obviously through your role in the council as well. But you've seen how much the women's side of thing has grown here in Geelong tremendously over the last, let's say, 10 years. Since the last G21 Soccer Strategy was undertaken about 2012. Has it pleasantly surprised you, or has it not surprised you at all, the growth of women's football here in Geelong over the last, say, 10 years?
Well, quick answers, yes. It's I guess it surprised me initially, but then you could feel the momentum coming, and just the sport as a whole in Geelong has grown significantly, as you know, Tonchi. Since 2012, 2015, there's been a growth of some 67% in the growth of the sport and participation, but the growth from women's participation in that G21 regions over 114% growth. And in fact, it's been that female participation, not only in soccer, but in other sports as well, cricket and football, that has really pushed state and local government to invest in facilities to cater for that gender and that participation rate.
Yeah, let's talk about the G21 report. Now, the last one was done in 2012. Now, it's an interesting fact that the City of Greater Geelong actually didn't sign off on this. The other shires, the other councils did around the region. Why was that the case? And how important was that document for the last 10 years? And what was done right, what was done wrong when that document was compiled?
Yeah, great question. So in 2012, in fact, we didn't note the report until the 29th of January 2013. It first came to council on the 11th of September in 2012. I was a fairly new councillor then, but I was working closely with people like Joe Zillick from North Geelong, Mick Nikolovsky at Geelong Soccer Club, Zolly down at Corio, Paul Miller at Rangers. And the concern the local clubs had at the time was the intended investment and the importance that the strategy was putting, or lack of, on sort of the core clubs that were sort of traditional soccer clubs from the 40s and 50s in the north. And there was a lot of focus on the other side of the river. There was a lot of focus on Surf Coast area, Armstrong Creek, and not really enough on the clubs in the north, which should be credited for probably establishing soccer in the Geelong region all those decades ago. And so I took my guidance from those people, and I deferred the report in 2012 and asked for it to be reconsidered. So when it came back in 2013, there wasn't a lot of changes. But what we decided as a council group was that, the community in our region, the Geelong region, are not totally comfortable with this report. And as such, we're not going to adopt it as such, but we'll note it. We can use it as a guide, but we need to have a stance here to say, hey, we don't think it's addressed all of the input and the feedback from our community.
Yeah. Now, I guess over the last maybe say 5-6 years, the northern suburbs, when we talk about the football clubs in the northern suburbs, have enjoyed a lot better support, financial support from both the state government and the local government in terms of funding. And I dare say there hasn't been a club that hasn't received some sort of funding. And indeed, the facilities in the north have improved. Now, a lot, no doubt, is down to yourself, the hard work yourself and other councillors, most notably Kylie Grisbeck, who's now no longer in the council, but along with Councillor Anthony Aiken in the Windermere ward, worked really hard. Was one of the reasons maybe why a lot of those northern suburban clubs did get a lot of funding was because of the back in 2013 when the club sort of said, look, we're not happy with this. We really want something better than this. And did that sort of make the council, I don't know, actually stand up and sort of think, oh, okay, hang on a sec, we need to do a little bit better for the soccer community in Geelong?
Yes, but I'll be totally transparent here.
Yeah.
Much of that investment, particularly in the early days, I'm talking, the last, from 2010, let's say 2018, a lot of that was just through scrapping and hard work with me and other councillors. But I'd have to say particularly me in that area, with working with the presidents of those clubs, which felt that they just hadn't had any representation in the sport of soccer for decades. And so, and you might recall, in the early days, councillors, we had some funding.
That's right, yes, yep.
And people might criticise that, but I can tell you now that if it wasn't for that funding that we used to have as councillors, many of those projects that got off the ground wouldn't have happened. The other thing that must be definitely acknowledged is the state government's World Game program. That also helped a lot. So I'm not taking credit, but I'm just saying that through the work with the presidents, which were very, very, grassroots, they knew what they wanted, dragging me in. I like soccer, Tonchi. I like all sports. I'm not saying I'm not brought up in it like some of you guys. But what I did do, and what the presidents and the community were very kind in, is they educated me.
Yes.
They educated me in what was important and what the sport of soccer did for the North, not just kicking the ball and playing a sport, what it did for. So a lot of those projects got over the line because of that work that we did. Now, the strategy helps. All strategies help. But you've got to have people in your corner too, fighting for you.
Yeah. Now, Josip Zilic, who you mentioned, he's obviously tuning in, and he's made a comment, and it's worth bringing this comment up on the screen there. If the football family is serious about making change, get onto Council's Your Say link and provide your voice. Be prepared to stand up and not stand by. Oh, I like that comment. You have
and that's a great. Sorry, if you don't mind me saying, that is Joe Zilic all over, because that. Joe was spearheading this last time. It was Joe that was encouraging me, pushing me, getting me to talk to the other presidents. So he's right. It makes a difference. You've got to speak up.
Yeah. So how can people do it? So look, the G21 Soccer Strategy has been presented to council. We even saw a photo there, and I'll bring that up as well. That's already been presented. How can now people have that feedback?
Okay, so so council noted the draft strategy last Tuesday night at the council meeting, and so I guess what I'm doing there with the photo, I'm trying to promote that it's out there. So we've now got 6 weeks to provide feedback through the council's Have Your Say page. It may not quite be there on the page today, but it'll be done by the end of the week. And then there's an opportunity, obviously, familiarise yourself with the report, which I've put on my Facebook as a link, so you can go in there and read it now, and provide your feedback. Tell us what you think about a regional facility. What do you think we need to be doing there? I'm all for Armstrong Creek, but I'm also for the north. We've got links to Melbourne Road. We've got an airport where we've got the Spirit of Tassie there now. So we're in the ideal location for some sort of a regional facility there as well. and provide your knowledge, because you are the
Yeah.
experts. We need to take that advice. And remember, it's not just council; it's Football Victoria that are going to be seeing this feedback.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is essential that we do jump on there and we do provide our feedback. And if we don't do that now and we just stand by, as Josip said, we'll only have ourselves to blame. Look, I do want to bring up a couple of there's a couple of comments or feedback that we've seen on Facebook. This has been on some of our posts that we've put, and there are a few people there, even people that are quite heavily involved in the football side of things. And Pete Bradley there. To be fair, it's a very good report, and so is the one in 2013, which promised a regional facility in Armstrong Creek. Will be interesting to compare it to the 2012 and see what has changed. Robert Cash, Pete Bradley there mentions, Robert Cash actually says, just a reprint edition too. And then Joe Pino says, not sure who conducted his study and how long it took, but it would have taken me, you, and anyone else involved in community football 10 minutes to come up with same conclusions. All right. Okay. Not exactly the most positive comments, but I guess that's what people are thinking. But how much of it, this is the fear in football circles, I guess, is that this report is just nothing than lip service. How can we as a football community ensure that this report is actually, and what's I guess one example of this being so put into practical use? Is it maybe with developers, because we are seeing estates being popped up left, right, and centre around Geelong? Are developers looking at reports like this when they're looking at what community facilities they're going to build, i.e. AFL grounds, soccer grounds, that kind of stuff?
So sort of yes to all of that. So first and foremost, the fact that those comments are there, that's excellent in my view, because we're talking soccer, right? We're not talking cricket, we're not talking tennis, we're talking soccer, and that's what we need to be talking.
Yes.
And I think we can criticise where things haven't been achieved. You've got to remember, a strategy and a master plan, I guess, is never a promise either. What it is a roadmap to where we want this to go as a community. What are the things we want to achieve? It's then a matter of really getting some grunt behind that and trying to get the funding from all levels of government. Councils won't do this on their own. I just know we just don't have the cash to do it on our own. We're going to need funding from the state, and they've shown in the past that they're willing to do that. And a regional facility, is going to be, 20 plus million to get a decent facility. We're going to need some real funding there. But where it can help is it helps you go and advocate for that funding. So if it's in the strategy, when the state government are looking at their commitments to community funding, particularly in the area of sport and rec, they look at what the different councils have got. The fact that we're under the guise of 5 councils and we're saying this is good for the region does provide a pretty strong voice in that. Equally, you touched on it with developers. When they're putting their plans forward, when they're trying to tell a story about the development they're wanting to bring, Northwest Growth Zone is a good example. That area is the next area to open up in Geelong. It's bigger than Ballarat. That's 155,000 people are going to be living in that area. It's bigger than Ballarat. They are definitely looking at plans like this and the AFL Barwon strategy and the cricket strategy to say, hey, we're going to bring this, but we're also going to bring this for the community. So, it really is important. And the comments that are on your Facebook page, they need to go into the submissions.
Yes.
Don't waste your enthusiasm. Put it into the submissions because that's where it's going to be valuable. Otherwise, it's just us reading.
100%. Absolutely so true. Anyway, we're going to take a very short break. When we return, if you don't mind just staying on, we're going to get the chairman of the Geelong Region Football Committee, Mike McKINSTry, to come on. And he'll also talk a little bit about Football Victoria's Regional Football Review as well, which is another interesting document. And that could have also some rather major ramifications for the region. Positive, I'm sure, for the positive growth of football in the region. So let's hang around. We've got a very short break and we'll be back with Mike McKINSTry joining us.
Our name is derived from the Greek prefix, macro, large. From the day we were born, this has been a promise for the future. We have grown through dedication, sweat, self-denial. faithful to our mission of being on the side of those who put themselves on the line. Through our name, we celebrate the greatness of those who believe there are no obstacles higher than their dreams. The courage to get back up after falling. The obstinacy of believing until the end. These are the values embedded in our logo. The Macron Hero. It's a celebration of sacrifice and tenacity. Up until your personal victory, until your arms are in the sky. Become your own hero.
Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce Mike McKINSTRY, who's also the chairman of the Geelong Region Football Committee. Mike, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Oh, good. Thanks, Tonchi. How are you? Hi, Eddie.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good. I think we're all basking in the glory of the Matildas at the moment. We're all very excited.
How good was that, mate? How good was that?
And I'm watching on the one hand here, China versus England kickoff. So there you go. So you see me glancing away, you know what's going on.
What's the latest score there?
They haven't kicked off yet. If I'm reading up to sport at the moment, hopefully I'm getting it live.
All right, Mike. As you would have seen the intro there, with Eddie, the G21 Soccer Strategy is or the draft has been produced, and now it's time for the public consultation. Mate, how important is this document, and how important is this process to the I guess the future development of football in this region?
Yeah, look, I think it's incredibly important, and look, I recognise from I'd sat through earlier some of the comments in the chat and so on, and there's a frustration. I mean, I know that somebody said it could take 10 minutes to write this. I mean, I could have said up front, what's the one thing we need? More facilities. I remember talking to Joseph about that. Him and I were involved to some extent with Joe Plummer and others in the past on this some years ago. But to me, that's only one element, and I think the important thing is that the last strategy we had was published in 2012. We haven't had one since. So if you're going to go and talk to local government, state government and wherever, and they say, can we just see what you're asking for in terms of support as it relates to your strategy? And you can't say you've got an up-to-date strategy. You're not getting off to a good start. So there's a lot of frustration that says, look, we know what some of the things need to be done. And that's true. But at the end of the day, I think you've got to have a clear strategy that you make available for people to comment, they get the input, as Eddie's outlined. And then once you've got that process in place, hopefully you've then captured all the views, both positive, negative, and quite rightly, some people are going to go, can we go harder, quicker? I'd love to. But I think once we've been through that process, at least people can then go back to saying, well, this is what you said in the strategy. So if you do ask for support, whether that be financial or otherwise, then organisations like local government, state government, and other parties for that matter, can see that, yeah, I can see how it relates to the strategy. This is consistent. And frankly, if I'm viewing it as an investor, that gives me confidence that the money I'm stumping up here is actually consistent with where this, the strategy of the football in the region is. And I think that would give us all confidence that we're gonna try and invest for the future. So that's, I think, in itself, though, the strategy is one thing. It's a document, and like a lot of organisations, you draw up these strategies, you make this big document, and you stick it on the shelf, and nothing changes. It's actually the follow-up part to that. It's the action, and that's the phase that we're going to move into after the consultation phase. And for me, to be frank, that's the most important phase. This is incredibly important for getting the foundation. But it's the steps from here that's actually when it starts to get into action.
Yeah. Speaking of action, Eddie, are other clubs better? Are they improving? And are they better at dealing with the various levels of government than they were, say, maybe 10 years ago?
I think by and large, yes. Because of the predecessors that were in the club and the engagement now that happens at that. It's something that we need to keep at the forefront, because I do find that clubs go through cycles when they change committee members. There may not be knowledge, that succession planning may not be there, and then all of a sudden they're not engaging at all the levels that they need to. So I continue to try to remind clubs to keep your councillors close, keep your MPs close, keep telling them and showing them what you want to do, because that's extremely helpful as you go. For instance, as myself, when I go into budget discussions, it's extremely important for me to understand what the clubs are wanting to try to achieve and what their aspirations are.
Yeah. What's your take on that, Mike? Because you deal with the clubs on a regular basis, and you've been the CEO of a quite high-ranking organisation here. From a business perspective, are the clubs running their affairs a lot more professionally, even though they're all volunteers and they're all amateurs? But are they running it more, from a methodology or method point of view? Are they running their affairs in a better way these days?
Look, I think overall the answer to that is going to be yes. And this might play into the discussion we're going to have about the regional football review that Football Victoria are going to do, because it varies. And you touched on it earlier. There's a lot of, really great clubs around Geelong that have been very strong for some time and are very well run, and they've to be congratulated for everything they've done. And that traditionally, as Eddie said, is the clubs in the north, and they've done a great job and deserve every credit for what they've done. However, some of the other clubs still need a bit of support. So they don't have the track record. They maybe don't have, as Eddie said, the depth of people who are involved in the committees for the years. And frankly, they're a smaller club, so they have less financial resources as well. They've got less membership. So sometimes, those clubs are maybe still developing their strategy about how they engage with their local MPs, whereas others have got that down pat and very well established. And I think one of the things that I know that a lot of the audience members, some of them might have been on some of these shows before, and I've talked about this idea of trying to make the tide raise all boats. I don't think what we want to have is a Premier League and Division 1. I think we want to actually bring up the other clubs to a point where we're playing very competitive football in Geelong. That's what we want. We don't want kids walking out and the really strong clubs thrashing the weaker clubs 10-0. The kids who win in 10-0 are learning, frankly, nothing. And the kids that are getting beat 10-0 are walking away pissed off. It's not particularly, if we're trying to grow participation for young women, we want to not equalise it or dim it down, but we want to encourage those clubs to remain strong, but we also want to have a more competitive league. And that involves not only investment in facilities, but investment in what I've called, you might remember, the hardware and the software, to use the IT analogy. You can go buy the best IT equipment in the world, but if it's got crap software, you'll have a great facility and lots of lights, but the standard of football in the field could be rubbish. So what are we going to do in alongside those things that are important for infrastructure, but also investing in things like coaching, and in particular, coaching the coaches? Because at the end of the day, those are the people that are often at the touch point for kids. And a lot of them are sometimes volunteers that have either been lucky enough to have played themselves or been involved in the game for some time, or others that are, as you know, from there's a lot of volunteers in this sport, as indeed in others. They do their best, but some of them don't even have a soccer background. And that's not a criticism of them, but they can't give the same standard of advice, perhaps, to younger kids coming in. So what can we do to help those clubs that are in that situation so we actually lift the game? And I think that's really important. This is where the strategy is going to be all-encompassing. It's not all about just facilities. It's about inclusiveness. It's about all the things that we're all trying to do, driving female participation, as well as getting out there and having fun. It's about winning too, but you also want to have, the kids, what we fundamentally want is the community sport to be competitive, but we also want it to be fun. And I think this is a kind of multifaceted document that we're trying to capture more than the obvious things, which you can rattle off in 10 minutes, which is give us more facilities and lights, and that's the easy bit. But it's trying to encompass all those other things alongside those other important hardware things, and I think that's what we're trying to pull together here.
Yeah. Eddie, just one last one with you, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're a very, very busy person, but what's been the main priorities that have been established by the G21 draft report so far? And part two of that question is, what ideally would you love to see, say, over the next 5 to 10 years? What will be the main things that this report will produce, if you like?
Well, first priority would be that Geelong Council adopt the report. So I'd love to get it to a position where the clubs, particularly the clubs in the Geelong region, because that's the area I'm interested in the most, are supportive of the strategy. And we actually adopt it this time. So that would be first priority. Second is that, of course, that it delivers on its actions in the period of time that's set. And the ones that are called out upon are facilities, of course. There's pitches, there's female participation, there's fair entry and fair play. But I still think the big ticket item would be to have either a sub or a regional facility in the Geelong area. that is a must. I think we've had a couple of lost opportunities with that, and that would be the one that I think we need to demand. Our city, along with Surf Coast and Golden Plains, are 3 in the top 10 growth municipalities in Victoria. And so, and for the fastest growing city on any given day in Australia, we deserve and need to have a regional and sub-regional facility in the Geelong area.
Eddie, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. And basically, it's out to you folks. We want as many people to be to have a say and to provide some feedback. And it's the Your Say part of the Geelong City Council website, the official website there. And that hopefully before the end of the week, there'll be an opportunity there to provide the feedback. Is that right, Eddie?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'll always do my best to come back, and I'm always willing to learn, as you're well aware.
Good on you. All right. Thank you very much for once again for joining us, Eddie.
Thanks for having me, and good to see you, Mike. Good to see you.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for all your support.
Thanks to all the listeners too. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Eddie KONTELJ, he's a very busy man, but he took time out to come on the show tonight. Mike, thanks for coming on the show tonight. Let's talk more about the Victorian Regional Review, the Football Regional Review. We just popped that up there, and that was the press release that was provided there by Football Victoria. Now, immediately it says they recognise the need for a comprehensive regional football review to ensure our game is played, administered and developed in the most effective and efficient manner possible across the state. Look, it all sounds good. It all sounds fantastic, but I don't know too much about it. And speaking to a lot of people around the traps at the moment, maybe it's still early days, but we don't really know too much about it. In order to conduct this review, Football Victoria has engaged Solutio, an independent organisation, to do all that. Do you know much about it, and has Football Victoria or this organisation been in touch with yourself or the Geelong clubs?
No, not as yet. They haven't been. And it's something that I think Football Victoria, they've obviously had a bit of a review internally. Look, I mean, I think we can always, and I know that there's a lot of people on the call here. You can always throw rocks at Football Victoria or local government or whatever because they're not good at this and not good at that. And I'm not defending them. However, the only thing I can say is that if an organisation sort of says to themselves, hey, look, can we put in place somebody to review how effective we are engaging with the associations and also with the clubs? In some ways, that's an admission of the fact that they know things need to improve. Yeah. Everybody knows that. So, and the first step is, admitting that and recognising it. And that's not to say that they necessarily did a poor job in all areas, but it's a challenging thing to coordinate, as you know, football across the whole of Victoria. And our focus is particularly with Geelong, which we're trying to put a voice. So I think the important thing is that we will be involved. I've been in contact with them about doing, exactly that. We will be talking to Solutio. I've personally been highlighted as being the person they want to talk to, but clearly what I want to do is gather all the views of everybody around Geelong, and not my view of the world, but the Geelong view of the world. So I think that's important. And I think the other part is if you look at the things they're going to look at, it's a bit more widespread than just the kind of traditional review. They're looking at things, as you've got it on the screen there, things like governance, the administration and operations, looking at other areas, they're looking at participation, equity, diversity, all those things. Facilities clearly is a huge part of that. And then they've added in some other things, including pathways of players, coaches and referees. So it's a bit more inclusive, the review that they're doing, than maybe, I don't know whether the last time they've done one, Tom, so you might know from your background, but
not that I can
the fact that
remember.
No, and look, I think I've been helpful. I've been working alongside Simon Wrench, who's just been appointed recently to look after this region, working for Football Victoria. And I sense they're trying to take a bit of a step back and look at it more, I guess, more strategically in some ways, because we can all get wrapped up in the day-to-day of what we do. But if they're looking at things like governance and admin and operations, and they're now looking at FV, but how can we support clubs, write their strategic plan? Because if you went around all the 20 clubs in Geelong at the moment and said, can you show me a strategic plan? I guarantee you, I won't put any numbers out there, not everybody could.
Yeah.
And it's not as though they don't think it's important. It's just to go, well, geez, I'm busy. I'm trying to coordinate everything that's going on in this club. How the hell do I write out this document? They might not have resources to do it, and they might need help. And I'm hoping that what we can do with the GRFC hat on is to say to those clubs that need that support, how do we try and engage with FV to say, hey, what can you do to support these clubs, get some of these things in place so that they've got their plan, so that if they're going to their local MP, going back to what we said earlier, they can hold up their plan as a club and say, this plan's consistent with the G21 plan. This is all hangs together. And again, hopefully it greases the wheels of investment and support coming from those other bodies if it all starts to align. Now, we're not there yet, but I think the first step in doing that is the strategy. But I think the fact that it's timely that FV are actually doing this review roughly at the same time, hopefully we can actually, 1 and 1 equals 3, if they use that terminology, try and get a bit of headwind behind it, as long as they get on and get it done.
Absolutely. And if we look at those different areas under review, one I'm particularly interested is the competitions and grievance discipline, how much of it actually they will look at the competition side of things, because everyone seems to always have a criticism of the competitions and the way the competitions is being run. And look, we're never going to get it 100% right, but if there's an opportunity, an avenue to provide that feedback so that going down the track, as the game grows, as the region grows, as the football community grows, because we are at the moment recording record numbers of participants, areas like that will certainly have to be improved and continuously improved, no doubt. So I'll be really interested to know the feedback process on that. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on tonight's show. I'm sure this is, as the off-season fast approaches, issues such as this are going to become even more important as we now start to look to the future and the foreseeable future. And look, all in all, I mean, it's quite bright, isn't it? We just talked about record numbers. Clubs are starting to improve their facilities across the board. There are opportunities for players to play at all levels. So it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, it's quite positive, isn't it?
Not at all. I mean, that's why we've got, as the report shows, we've got about roughly 5,600 participants in Geelong now. And of that, about 1,400 or so, if I call it 1,500 for round numbers, are female. So we'll see the big growth in the female game, which is fantastic. And the game generally is really strong. And that's why it's good that they have got things like competitions and grievances. I mean, as you might know, Tonji, I chair the Geelong Regional Football Committee meeting with all the clubs that do turn up.
Yep.
And there's another thing, because they don't always turn up. And that's the thing that we want to try and engage people so that we get greater attendance, so that they know that their voice is getting heard properly. But we end up spending a lot of discussion about fixtures and so on. And there's a lot of work still to be done there. But, we help, coordinate with FV this year about how we'd structure, for example, the female game, about whether we go for 1 league, 2 weeks, where we had the debate about, well, there's these 5 or 6 clubs that are really strong, and all the clubs will say, well, we don't want to put the lower level clubs that are still not developing yet up against those 5 because they get thrashed. So we had all that debate within the clubs themselves. And I think a lot of people forget that the Geelong Regional Football Committee is literally that. It's a committee. It's not me.
Yep.
And the committee involves all the clubs. But if all the clubs don't turn up, then they're not going to have a say. But equally, I understand why they don't always turn up, because they think, well, what's the values they're adding? And I think it is beginning to build. I think if we can get some momentum behind the strategy, behind this review, then it'll just give Geelong a stronger voice, and that's got to be a good thing for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll look. You mentioned the women's competition and how it was a 15-team division, and then it was finally split up. And if we actually have a look, if we bring the ladder up, okay, Lara United on the bottom, they've lost 4 games, but you get that generally speaking. But even the second last place team, Drysdale, they've won a game in their first 4 matches, and it's actually quite a competitive league when you look at it. Strong United, Surfside Waves just outside the top 4. They're on 4 points. So at the end of the day, it's actually worked out quite well. All right, in hindsight, we can talk about it and say that was the case, but, everyone was complaining, it's a 15-team league and 15-team league. But the only way we can improve these kind of things is feedback and a structured way of providing that feedback. And that's precisely what these 2 reports, the G21 and the Football Review from Football Victoria, provides, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I've got a meeting with Football Victoria tomorrow. We're doing some review, for example, the country championships, which is not necessarily directly involved in Football Victoria, but we're also going through participation. We're going through the fixtures, and we're also going to put in place the budget. We're going to get more deeply involved in the financial planning and what it looks like within the GRFC. A lot of that stuff we hadn't necessarily seen or been engaged in for some years. So it's now becoming more transparent. We're getting access to that information. So it's moving. You know, we'd all like it to, and I get the feedback from some of the people on the call. We want to move quicker. Hey, I'm with you. I would love it to move quicker too. But the bottom line is that it's beginning to happen. The next phase is going to be the important part, which is the doing part. By the way, England are up 1-0.
Yes, England up 1-0 over China. Thank you, Brenton Ray. And so is Denmark over Haiti as well. So Denmark 1-0 as well. So that's going to be very interesting. China looking like, or Denmark possibly could be the runner-up in that division. So is that the team that will be playing? Who knows? Mike, thank you very much for joining us, and we certainly look forward to having now, thanks to the Gordon, who have come on board as the major sponsor. We will not only see out this season, but we'll be here for at least the next 2 months. So hopefully in the off season, we'll be able to get you on, and we'll have a little bit of a review of the season that was and look ahead to 2024, which should be even bigger than what 2023 was.
Absolutely. Great news, by the way. I was really pleased. I saw some of Joe's interview earlier, so he's a good guy, and great to see their support. So that's really good news for you. I'm pleased.
And a football man to boot. That's also
absolutely
important. Good on you, Mike. Thank you very much.